Hello everyone, this is KIDM the man bringing y'all another figure review of the Hasbro's Power Rangers Lightning Collection, SPD Yellow Ranger. First off, this figure came very early in Malaysia and it came right after 1 week later when Mesogog was released. To my knowledge, this figure is supposed to be an exclusive, but we still don't know which exclusive it is to. It could be a store exclusive or it could be a fan channel exclusive. I still don't understand what that means. But since this is a final member of our core SPD team, and I might be slightly a little bit late, so without further ado, let's get started. As this is our final member of the core SPD team, which uses the exact same mold as SPD Pink, the paint apps and the molding of this figure is amazing. It's exactly the same as SPD Pink, where it is using the exact same body mold, but with the exception of the helmet, the color of the plastic used, and the difference in how the decals were applied. If you'd like to know my thoughts on it that I previously mentioned about SPD Pink, you can check out this old review here. But there is one thing I have to mention, and if you see my live stream review, in which I'm sure a few of you did, you will know that there's nothing too special about this SPD figure. But in case you didn't watch it, here's a quick rundown. The helmet of the figure is nicely sculpted and painted. This time it is sculpted in a yellow plastic, since this is the Yellow Ranger of course, and it is molded to include the 4 extra visor windows, just to differentiate that this is the 4th SPD Ranger and to give it some uniqueness in this design. The visor itself is nicely painted, although mine does have a slight paint chip on the left hand side. Not only that, unlike SPD Pink, the outline of the visor has some white paint on it. You got a nice silver for the mouth plate and the SPD logo on the forehead. From the side, you do have some nice silver paint that generally goes around the helmet and outlines the sirens on the ears. The sirens are nicely sculpted too, along with a nice shade of red applied. For the neck of the figure, although you can't see it here, it does use the new neck joint, in which it is slightly thinner, and if you're not too careful, it will be prone to breaking. Other than that, it does have a nice silver paint around the collar. Looking at the torso of the figure, the SPD logo is nicely printed on as well. It's just a simple black rectangle with the text of SPD nicely printed in white. If you look at it from the left side, the number 4 is nicely printed on as well. Although it might break the illusion if you were to pose a torso, I'm just glad there aren't any paint errors in this area. As for the right arm of the figure, it's entirely molded in yellow plastic. Not only that, you do get a nice SPD badge printed on the right shoulder. It's not molded on like the other male figures, but at least it's consistent with the printed on version with SPD Pink. For the wrist cuffs, they're nicely painted in silver with a little bit of black in the middle. In order to keep up with consistency, the left arm of the figure is made out of black plastic, and it's nice to see that the left cuff is consistent with the right. Now if you managed to catch my live stream review, you would know that I mentioned that the belt of this figure is slightly bit different. What I mean by this is that the indents of this particular belt buckle is not as deep as it should. The reason why I said that is because the previous versions do have a nice deep indent in them, allowing you to panalign the belt buckle just so that you can bring out the details within them. You could still try to do it for this one, however there might be a risk of messing it up if you're unable to color in between the lines. So do be extra careful. For the D-knuckle holster is exactly the same as SPD Pink, along with the baton as well. For the lower half of the body, you get your old standard Lightning Collection legs. This basically means that you don't have the same drop-down hips. Although Hasbro is trying to make it as a standard for all Lightning Collection figures to get some drop-down hips, in which they still have a few kinks to fix, but at least she is consistent with SPD Pink, so this doesn't ruin the illusion. Last but not least, the boot cuffs of this figure is nicely molded as well, along with the paint apps applied. Oh, and you still get the same standard issue SPD boots. Z comes with 1 weapon holding hand, 1 SPD morpher holding hand, 2 suspicious finger blasting hands, the baton in holstered mode, the baton in extended mode, the D-knuckle, the error SPD morpher, a very familiar effect piece, and a head. Perhaps I may have figured out what might make this figure an exclusive, and that's mostly because of the batons. As you can see from these 2 different batons, they are very nicely painted. Because if you were to compare them with the other batons that we've got, From the other SPD ranges, these are the best looking paint apps on the batons that I've seen. Not only do you have the shiny silver painted, but you also get some yellow on the handles of the batons. Don't believe me? Go check back your other SPD ranges batons. As for the D knuckle, although it is slightly different than SPD pinks, it is still nicely painted on as well. For the SPD morpher, we do have another error in the decal application. Despite the molding of it using the original size that we got from the other SPD ranges, maybe except SPD pink, the printing of the front plate is definitely upside down. As you can see from the way I'm holding it, this is how it should look, and the sirens of the morpher should appear on top of the D. If you look closely enough, there is a tiny indent of the paint job which should have been on the slider. So although we do get a minor inconsistency, I'm just glad we got a morpher at all. Although I do wish we could have gotten something else other than this. If you want to give Z her sidearm, you're gonna have to take the D knuckle and the holstered baton and combine them with each other. The correct way to do so is to take the hook part of the baton and line it up on the D knuckle. And just like that, after pushing it in, Z now has a shooting weapon. Now it is possible to use the extended baton on the D knuckle as well, but there might be a slight chance that it's not show accurate. So if that's important to you, best to avoid that. For the civilian head of Z, it looks pretty good. We got a very nice head sculpt of Z, albeit slightly bit cartoonish looking. It's been molded pretty well, all the way from the printing of the eyebrows to the printing of the eyes. The ones on mine might look a little bit off-centered, as it's giving the impression that the eyes are looking slightly towards the right. Perhaps something has caught Z's eyes. The hair of the civilian head is nicely sculpted as well. It's unique just like every other hair sculpt, and it is painted in a nice brownish brunette hair color. It's perfect as it is, so don't be cheeky and try to paint it blonde. So here she is next to the previously reviewed Mesogog from Dino Thunder, her SPD A Squad counterpart, the Figurized Standard Kamen Rider Blade, a Dino Fury basic figure, the Legacy Collection Dr. Oliver, and Decade. Oh, and the rest of the B Squad. We should be used to the inconsistencies of the Lightning Collection by now, but it still baffles the rest of the community. The helmet of these two Rangers are slightly different. The SPD logo on top of the Pink Ranger's helmet is molded in the exact same way as how it is molded with the other male Rangers. But as for Z, it looks like the area in which the badge would be is slightly raised, but the logo itself is printed on. Now that's one of the inconsistencies I've noticed. Secondly, here's the next set of figures. If you take a closer look, the joints of them are very different, which is why it's important for you to take extra care when you are switching out the helmets. I advise you to use the chin up head removal technique that I've shown before in the past if you want to switch the civilian heads. Around the collar area, Z's collar is painted in silver, whereas Sid's isn't. The SPD logo on the chest is different as well. Now it could be an optical illusion, but I really do feel like the body mold used for SPD yellow is different as compared to SPD's pink. But since the neck joint itself is using the new system, I'm almost 99% sure that the body mold between these two are different. The badge on the shoulder is clearly different as you can see from here. Although both of them are printed on, they are of two different printing designs. The wrist cuffs are definitely different, as the black on pink's wrist cuffs are significantly larger than yellow's. As for the belt buckle, this is what I mean by the decrease in indents of the SPD words. So it's definitely going to be a bit difficult if I'm going to pen align it. Last but not least, on something that's been highlighted before, the color plastic used for the belts are definitely different. And lastly, taking a closer look at the two batons, we can see that yellow's is possibly molded in black plastic, whereas pink's is molded in pink. And from here you can see the significant paint differences between the two. So if the paint apps like these are considered premium, it might solidify my reasoning as to why SPD Yellow is considered an exclusive. Either that, or I'm just trying to find a reason for Z to be an exclusive figure. Perhaps later on we'll find out why. So all in all, SPD Yellow is pretty great. She's the last member of the B Squad that we have to collect, and having the entire team on display is pretty amazing. Now despite the lack of new accessories that comes with the set, not to mention the error of the SPD morpher, I would say that it is a pretty fair trade when you get the accessories painted nicely. Because if you were to compare it with all of the other accessories that we got from the SPD line, SPD Yellow's accessories would be the most superior. So I can't wait to find out which store exclusive that SPD Yellow can be found in. So that way, with all of you watching this, can put this particular figure posing alongside the rest of her team on your shelf. And speaking of shelves, how does she look like on mine? So if you like this video, blast that like button, leave a comment down below, let me know what do you think of Z, the SPD Yellow Ranger. Share this video with your friends and family to let them know that if they want this particular figure, they're gonna have to pay a slightly bit extra for international shipping. Or they can just wait patiently until Z gets released in your area. I'm sure all of you are excited to have this particular figure in your collection, so figure out which method works for you. And finally, feel free to subscribe, as there are a lot more unique videos coming soon. This is KIDM the Man, and I'll see you all next time.